Welcome, everyone. Today is February 21st, 2023. This is the Finance Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
The United States
of America,
and
to the republic
for
which stands
one
nation under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty
with liberty and justice
for all.
for all.
And thank you for coming. And I don't have my disclosure statement handy, so hold on one second. Our remote meeting. I think I would have it memorized by this time.
Yeah.
All right, this meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A, Section 20, and on June 16, 2021, the Governor signed an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This meeting is being recorded. All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. We have a couple of things on our agenda tonight, but the first thing we're going to talk about is the Westport Fiscal Stability Memo and analysis that was done. And I would love to welcome Al Lees, and you can introduce yourself, or you need no introduction, but I'd like to turn the floor over to you and say hello and start on your welcoming being here. So thank you for coming tonight.
You're mute, Al.
You're muted.
How's that, better?
Yes, much better.
All right. That's probably the first time that Elise has ever been muted in entire while. So I just want to make that clear. I just want to thank everybody for spending a few minutes with us. And yes, my name is Al Lees. I am the convener of a group that started approximately a year ago with a very small group, Buzzy, Karen, and there is one other that I fail to remember, but it was just the three of us kicking around ideas about what is going on or what may go on in the future with fiscal stability. And of course, there were there's been a number of studies over my gosh, almost 15 years now. Jack Healy brought it up years ago. The master plan brought it up. Of course, Dick had his group back in 2015 or something discussing it, and we just wanted to not only update but also try to get a road mark or a path forward, because as the changes came over time with the state and the inflation, and you go on down the list, COVID. I mean, there's no lack of things that have impacted our fiscal condition in the town of Westport. How did we get here? Where are we now? Where are we going forward? And I think that was kind of the playbook, if you will. Cindy and Buzzy and Karen in particular could agree or disagree with that. And we're in the process of putting together a formal presentation, but I wanted to do it old school tonight, if everybody doesn't mind, and just have a conversation. Sit around a table, grab a cup of coffee, grab a beer. I don't care what you grab, and simply just discuss where we are, discuss where we've been, and discuss how we move forward. I've had a lot of I was thinking about this afternoon on my porch, trying to figure out what this meant to me and why I got involved. And without going into any elaborate detail, I get involved because I am very, very, very concerned about this town. It doesn't mean that we are in a position that we're that we're in crisis, although we are in financial difficulty right now. But I thought about my father, and I thought about myself and how we operated our business. And what we did always was think of the customer first. So when you think about the customer first, you think about the taxpayer first. What are we delivering? What do the customers like? What don't they like? Try things, don't try things. If the customer doesn't like it, you just boot it and start off from scratch. So I see this document more as as not a roadmap as much as a beginning document to get conversation going. We know we need funds, or at least our committee, our group knows that we need funds. But I've had a lot of conversations with many different groups and many different people over the last 2 weeks, as you can imagine. And I have enough lunches right now so that I'll probably gain about 40 pounds by the time I finish all of the conversations that I have with people on all different sides, But one of the things that really comes up is the credibility of what we're doing, what the town is doing, and I'm not picking on people in particular, but what the finance committee is doing, what the select board is doing, what our committee is doing in terms of trying to convince the customer that something is needed. And that is a tricky and a difficult conversation to have. But I am proud of the work that our group has done to kind of lay on the table for conversation, so that we can get this going. There are so many issues that specifics. I mean, my head explodes sometimes as far as trying to answer or think about or answer a variety of different questions that come about. I mean, it really explodes. And we're in a situation right now where I am convinced that we will, in fact, have reduced services. Whether we have 3 to 5 of this or 1 or 2 of that or whatever is immaterial. What is important is that we will continue to have reduced services if we don't change the way we do business. That is now, I'm going to have to kind of separate between committee and my personal feelings. Now I'm talking personal. I'll flip back to committee. We have an opportunity to change the business model we have, but people are not happy with what's going on with the business model we have right now. It's that old saying, when you bang your head against the wall, and all the time and expect a different outcome or whatever it might be. That's what we're getting. It's just many people feel that there is just more and more throw good money after bad. Just don't change the business model. And we need to think about that. I don't know how is the best to do this, Karen or Hugh or whomever else is on the board, but it has to be done. There needs to be a thoughtful conversation. There needs to be a group that will, in fact, address the 30,000 foot view of where we are going as a town. I mean, or else we're not going to have an override. We're not going to have an override, and what will end up happening, in my opinion, is that we will just continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper into the abyss, if you will, and just have such minimal services that we will not be we will function, but we will not thrive. We will not grow. We will not go forward. There have been a few things that have come up, and I cannot disagree with them at all. What are we doing about all the buildings in the town that are requiring all sorts of repairs, getting them back on the tax rolls? Just consolidating, looking at our business vision to consolidate and incorporate a variety of different departments into one, become more efficient. That is certainly one. What are we? This afternoon, I was sitting there, in my chair, and saying, really, the question is why? Why don't we have the type of funding that we deserve from the state? Why? Why are we 40% less in our per student funding than neighboring towns in some cases? Why does the UGA funds go up and down? I mean, Karen, you did the you did the analysis. We went from $1.5 million to $900,000. No, not one other town in this entire area. And I've done an analysis of 19 different towns, from Wareham to Seekonk up to Taunton, Freetown, et cetera. Not one other town took the hit that we did. Why? Because arbitrarily, we were told by the state that we are a minimum aid town. We don't deserve it, in other words. I mean, you can use all the acronyms you want, but we don't deserve it. We've got more funds than we need. There are a lot of people that disagree with what I'm saying, but I'm telling you, it is not right. Now what we have is but we also need to have a conversation about these funds that we're asking for. We need to have a conversation about how we divide it up. I know that many on the committee or the group that we have organized have said, we can't, we need the money, but if we can't agree as a town on how this money is going to be split, even members of our group cannot support an override. How's that? I mean, if we can't sit there and say over the next 3 years or 4 years, whatever the number is, it's not important, the actual numbers. If we cannot agree how we're going to split the money and divide it so it's an entire town funding instead of one group or the other, going to town meeting, stacking the deck, if you will. Even some of us can't support it, but we do support the idea that we need the money. So there's a lot of stuff on the table, and I'll end it with this for right now because I think there's a lot of questions, and I'm happy, as well as members of the committee, to answer it. That what we need to do is get credibility. The people of this town need to understand and feel comfortable that what is being done is being done well, being done for the right reason, being done for the right purpose, whether it's perceived or real, immaterial. And I get that. I hear, I hear that feeling. I mean, we just want to know, we, meaning the people in the town, I'm not saying necessarily me personally, we need to know that the way the money is being spent in the best possible way for the best possible reason, and for the town, and not continuing the same thing that has been going on, for good or for bad. Because if we don't do this right, if we don't have monitors of measurement, if we don't have accountability for this money, I'll tell you what, we may or may not get this override. But if we do, we'll never get another one if we don't if we don't show the people in this town that the money is being spent correctly and for the right purpose. So. All right, I have said what I need to say.
Well, that's a lot to unpack.
A lot to unpack, I know.
I'm going to, Buzzy has his hand raised, so I'm going to digest what you said and try to come up with some words myself. But go ahead, Buzzy.
Okay. Hi, Al.
Hi.
Yeah. As you've mentioned, I, along with a number of other people, have been involved in a lot of these discussions up until now. What I find new and exciting is what you've discovered, and some of us have discovered, no surprise, since we released that report, is that there is this problem of credibility that you've mentioned, that people have stories to tell about things they think have been incorrect or wasteful. If they had not been done, maybe we would not have the financial problems we have. You mentioned a couple specifically, that you had lunch with a mutual acquaintance who raised questions, for example, about the Council on Aging, that it was a tremendous mistake for us to spend the money we spent making the parking lot there as large as it is, because there's never going to be an occasion, he suggested, when that many cars would be parked there, the building wouldn't hold all of the people. Similarly, he said something about wasted money because of the way the elevator was repaired there. Could have been done, as I recall. I'm getting all this secondhand from you, Al. So you'll tell me if I'm wrong. The elevator could have been repaired during the COVID period when nobody was there and so forth, suggesting that would have saved some money. I wonder whether it would not be very valuable at this point, either for the Finance Committee or for the committee that you've convened, or somehow or other the town, to invite everybody who has a story of that sort to provide it to us, and then set up some sort of system for checking out the accuracy of the story, and whatever explanation there may be for why things were in fact handled that way, if they were handled that way. Not only to point out any errors that there may be in the thinking out there among taxpayers, but to gain value from suggestions that things could be done better. So I don't know how we can do this, but I'd like to discuss at some point the possibility of setting up some sort of ombudsman or some sort of website where people will trust that a fair job will be done of investigating things that they have heard or things they think they know, so that we can build credibility, although we have to face the fact that it's going to be difficult. Nobody wants to pay additional taxes.
Correct.
And so there's going to be a certain amount of eagerness to find problems, to find reasons not to approve the spending of more money. But I think we have to proceed in good faith. And we have to presume that that the taxpayers are all proceeding in good faith. And that good faith efforts will be made to find out the truth and to make improvements where they should be made.
Karen, I'm sorry, I don't know how to use the buttons. Oh, there it is, the hand up or whatever. I just want
go right on. Go ahead.
I from what I am gathering, and I have to say that I've heard from people from Westport Harbor to North Westport to God only knows where. So this is across the socioeconomic and logistical area. And I've gotten a lot of feedback, as you can imagine. We need to have this conversation, Buzzy. Whatever the structure is, I don't know. Whoever puts the structure together, I don't know. There are deep concerns, but I do feel in my heart of hearts that people do are receptive to an override, with the caveat that we need to have long-term fiscal accountability for where their money goes. You know, they don't want to just throw good money after bad. Nobody does. I don't think anybody in these boxes, the Hollywood squares that I'm looking at right now, want to do that either. But we need to have a structure to be able to all groups, not sides, because I hate that, but all groups come together in a way that we can sit down and honestly discuss the issues and honestly figure out how we are going to move forward. And I'll leave it at that. But
Yeah, and just to, I mean, there's so many questions like that out there, and I would be hopeful that if someone had a concern, that they should, at the time that it happens, they should bring it up to the select board as a question. Those are operational things that the select board should be, if a question comes up, they should be able to address. So if somebody had concern of why we spent money in some way, rather than complaining about it and thinking it's not correct, seek the information and seek the question. So we may have a lot of pent up things to try to address, but absolutely everyone should be transparent and accountable for everything. Cindy, you have your hand up, so I'll let you go.
One of the other items, and I know some of the items that you had mentioned that Buzzy was referring to, and your feedback to the group also included that the override really had to also include enhancements, that that this would provide a better life, if you will, that we would see improvements in lots of cases if they did vote for an override. And as I mentioned at the last meeting of the fiscal group, this isn't, the very modest amount of money that is being proposed is not going to provide that. It's going to, perhaps stop some bleeding, but it's not going to cure the patient. It's, it's really just something to keep us going for a while, pretty much at a slightly negative status quo. I mean, nothing too severe enough, but certainly not enhance anyone's feeling towards any of the services that we can provide in town, which is a concern. I go back to 2 years ago at town meeting. The select board promised then that we would have an open forum, open to the public, to discuss these very issues. That whole year went by, nothing. At the last town meeting, the select board once again assured voters we would have an open forum with department heads and with the right people involved, open to the public to discuss these things. Here we are, 2 months from town meeting, nothing has happened again. There is an accountability issue here. And I really feel that the select board has not done what it could do and what it should do to provide this kind of information to the taxpayers. I feel that they have been very silent on so many of these issues and have not followed through in the promises that they have made for 2 years in a row. So if we go to town meeting again and it's like, well, yeah, we'll have a meeting and we'll invite everyone and we'll have this open forum. If it happens a third time, I'm not kidding. I am so done with this, because we're just repeating the same record over and over again, and we manage to limp by with, another broken bone here or there. And we just kind of put a little splint on it and hope that we can get through to the next year. It's terrible. It's just terrible. There isn't sufficient leadership nor cause for concern, actual concern that we're going down a very, very dark path here. And I don't think anybody in the select board has hit those alarm buttons. And I don't know why. I don't know why.
Thanks, Cindy. Just to add on to your point, and I agree, and credibility is extremely important. And we as a finance committee have been talking about, quote, we need an override for years. And last year we finally collectively got it off the ground and, had it, the select board agreed, and we got it to an article on the town warrant. And then it was the finance committee at the last minute that, for credibility's sake, Al, we said, we don't know what the override amount should be. We need more time to come up with the correct number, what makes sense, what's fair and equitable, what's needed. And, we pulled the plug on it the last minute for what we think to be credible for us. We didn't want to go and represent a number for an override without substantiation or without having spent the time to do it. So I agree that, we need the credibility, and we need to have the right numbers, and we need to have a plan in place. We need to have a 5-year plan. I absolutely agree. We need to know, and we need to get commitments from all the department heads, the school committee, the select board, and all of us combined, how if it is a $3 million override, how are we going to use it? Because again, the revenue only grows by a very small percentage, and inflation is going to continue to outpace it. So that override is going to erode itself in a certain period of time. And so we need to figure out how to use it, how to best use it, and how long we expect it to last. Those are important things to do. And I don't want to go to town meeting, and I'm not going to suggest an override until we have that either, because our own credibility, my own credibility is at stake, and I wouldn't support it unless we have an absolute plan either. So go ahead, Hugh, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think the core issue in many ways is fairness, as Al says, both real and perceived. And there's certainly a strong feeling in some quarters, I won't say everyone, but that some areas are preferred over others. The old animal farm. Some animals, all are equal, but some are more equal than others. And that is the core of a lot of it, I think. Why the state put us on their blacklist, I have no idea. That seemed to happen in 2008. And that was a crunch for everybody, but we didn't do anything bad to anybody. We have 2 guys from Westport who are on Beacon Hill. I don't know the answer to that one. I don't guess anyone does. But I think the point I wanted to make is everyone has to be on board with spreading it across all participants. And that's the core of it. You don't have that if you have those who are paddling their own canoe. It's a waste of time. Though necessary, don't misunderstand me. I think it's perfectly necessary, but there's a difference between necessary and possible.
Yep.
Thank you, Hugh. Sue, you've got your hand up.
Yes, my thought is that we were saying about trying to research some of the information of things that happened in the past, and that's important in that you need to learn from things that happened in the past. But I think what's almost just as important here is to figure out certain things that we can do to be accountable for going forward. As Al was saying, combining offices, or is there stuff like this that we can do to make things better moving forward? My office, for example, was previously 2 offices, now it's 1. And, what other things that we can do to tell the taxpayers, this is what we're going to do this is how we're going to save some money here and put it here to make this better for the town, make things more efficient and so forth. But whatever we come up with, it's got to be followed through with.
Thank you, Susan. Gary?
I'll let you, maybe you want to finish a thought. I want you to go first.
Hugh, did you have more? You're muted, Hugh.
I just want to say that I thought the idea of listening to the details about things that people complain about is fine, but not 70% or more of the budget is personnel. And the parking lot or the elevator or something, sure, no harm to go look at those and so forth. But I think in general, the town issue has not been bad management, it's been lack of revenue. I think in general, people in working like indentured servants, when though we have 5 people, I think, on the highway department, so forth and so on. It's not they're not doing a good job, it's there are not the resources to do things that need to be done. So no harm in sort of an audit of this and that, but I don't think that's really the problem.
Well, it's interesting, Hugh, somebody's perception is their reality, right? So even if the town was properly managing things, and let's say there's a very good reason for those two examples that were, identified, we need to communicate that to somebody, because that's their perception. And so their reality is that the town isn't, operating efficiently. So it's really, it's opening up the communication to kind of debunk the myths and where there are, and kind of really express really where we are. So
I don't disagree, Cameron. I'm just saying that I think the core is more in the lack of revenue, and also the fairness issue, I think, is important. I think there's a significant group of people who feel that the money is not fairly used across the town. And once you have that point of view, then you say, why bother with getting more? I'm not going to see any of it.
Yeah. Al, you got your hand up. Go for it.
Couple of quick points. Cindy brought up about communication credibility. We all have, and I have to say that, and the select board wanting to, you're saying that they were going to do A, B, and C over 20, 21, 22. I got to say, I was disappointed and in fact shocked when I went to the select board with the group's report. I spent an hour and a half. I was supposed to be on it at 6:30. I understand things don't work exactly, on time, but it was almost 7:45. They spent all the time listening to a group of people that were worried about water coming because of new construction in Newton Avenue, which frankly, as a layman, I would think that would be a planning board issue or a conservation issue and not a select board issue. Then in addition to that, we spent a lot of time on one person's salary, which get it, it was important. We spent less than 12 minutes on a report that our group spent 1 year, every week for 1 year, to put together. Whether people like what our conclusions were or not, that's open to debate. 2 of the 4 had not even read the report. I don't know about one of them. I know Dick Brewer did. I'm going to name his name, and good for him. But the rest of them were buzzing and chatting behind me while Cindy was speaking, while Betty was speaking, and looking at their iPad about the report. I think it was completely disingenuous. I was appalled. All right. I've lived in this town for 69 years. I paid taxes for 55. I don't want to exaggerate. I have never been I walked out of there so disgusted. And I know the select board is looking at this right now, and I'm going to tell them right now, I was just appalled at the lack of how do I say this?
Well, it's a lack of acknowledgement. They didn't acknowledge it.
There are 10 people that volunteered their time every single week, free of charge, with the only concern of figuring out how to make our town better. And they couldn't even read the damn report. That's why people get ticked off. And boy, I used the T word and not the P word. So
it seems to be a toxic subject for the select board. For whatever reason, they will say, yeah, we need to deal with an override, but it's not a subject that they care to address in depth. It's just, yeah, I know, we need it. That's about it. Three words, we need it.
Well, and I think a couple of select board members are more vocal about it than others. And there's 2 or 3 members that are very silent and don't even engage in conversation about it. And all 5 need to be discussing it and need to be very vocal in communicating about it. It's not just for one or 2 members to bring up and everyone goes, yeah.
Exactly.
There needs to be a conversation. It needs to be pushed forward.
And just by the way, Al, you had very good reason to feel the way you did. I was there. Betty was there as well, and you had good reason to feel that way because it seemed to be, yeah, well, I guess we have to get to this, and that was the end of that. We spent far less time on the discussion of that. Had Betty and I not gotten up to add additional comments, it would have been 5 minutes.
5 minutes, right?
Let alone 12 minutes. And then it was dismissed. The whole report was just dismissed. I agree.
Just to circling back, Al, I participated in some of the meetings early on and then had to leave in May for my real job took over my life. But, I appreciate the group getting together and really diving into all of the elements and you debugged all the myths and started to realize, hey, we do need an override. We do have an issue here. It's not spending. It's not, coming to whatever conclusions you came to, but you spent the time and dug into everything, into state aid, into everything and there's even more to dig into, but you made an investment in time and what the group did is very appreciative. So I thank the group for doing it and to have really an independent group of well-rounded individuals of Westport that are well-respected. And when you come to the conclusions that you've done the research and you put together that paper, I think that should stand very strong and it's appreciated. So I'd like to thank you and the entire group for doing it. So I think we appreciate it here. So thank you.
I will carry that on to our
Please.
Tomorrow morning meeting and the rest of the group know. Thank you, Karen, so much.
Yeah. Buzzy, you have your hand up.
Actually,
And you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Gary's been trying to say something for a while, so why don't I yield the floor to him? But then I
Okay, Gary.
would like to say something after.
So,
That's right. You yielded it to Hugh and then you lost
You
it.
forgot about me. My head's aching over here. So, I've been on this committee for 10 years now, and this isn't new news. And it's it's an accumulation of what's happened in this town for decades. And you can ask any department head, you can poll anybody that's ever worked for the town, and they've been under-resourced tremendously. So, it's tough. This is a tough decision and a tough time to be making these decisions, actually. But I go back to, right after I wasn't chair and Karen became chair, I called for a summit, some kind of summit in town that would bring a group of people together. Because in my opinion, people will listen to the non-political groups, the people who, like the people that put this analysis together. If they hear it from those folks, then they're going to take some credibility out of that. There may not be any political will to move forward with an override. I think we see that, and not only on the local level, but on the state level. We have 2 reps that live in this town. Where are they at town meeting? Where are they involved in this process? I think it's lacking. Also on the select board, it's lacking. So the writing is on the wall. The writing is on the wall. There is no ambition to move this forward, or no momentum. We've seen it over the last 3 years. We call for a summit, no traction. So what do we do at this point? We're stuck in the middle of departments who are asking to be funded, rightly so, because they have to run their departments. We're looking at a school system that, a brand new school, that, we don't want to see teachers laid off. We know that they need the funds. We know, but what we do is we Band-Aid approach this every single year. So does it take the fact that we need to have a little pain? Your street may not be plowed. God forbid your house is on fire. God forbid you're getting held up. This is where it's coming to. We're not there yet, but this is where it's coming to. And the residents of this town need to seriously know that. And not from a select board, not from the finance committee, but they need to hear it from the peers, groups like this, that, hey, we've got a major issue in this town. And there doesn't seem to be the political will to get it right. So do we take that initiative on our own, and do we go to town meeting, and do we fight the fight for the department heads that need to stand up for their own departments? And I get that sometimes they don't want to, because they feel that there's going to be retaliation and all that. But I will go on record right now to say that I've talked to many department heads in this town, and they feel that they're intimidated to do that. They're intimidated to speak on behalf of their own departments, because they feel that there's going to be retaliation. A budget might be cut. Staff might be cut. That's not a way to run business. I don't care. If the select board can, and quite keep in mind, some of those members that are on the select board were finance committee members. So it seems like when they get on these boards, a light switch goes off. They forgot where they came from. Okay. And I'm being frank here. I think that there needs to be we need to have a one-on-one with these boards. We need to have a one-on-one, a candid sit down with the entire finance committee, a candid sit down with the select board, and say, listen, like Al said, is it more important to listen to somebody that's going to have water in their backyard, or a budget that will disseminate and this town will be on its knees? And we're getting there. We're getting to that stage. So I get the select board have different goals and different, they look at things differently. But if you cannot get the finances in order, everything else is mute. Everything else is mute. Your libraries don't exist. Your police department doesn't exist. Your fire departments don't exist. So that's number one. Finance is number one. And if you can't realize that with members that have been on the finance committee that serve as select board members, then, and I'm not speaking for all of them, then there is a real issue.
Thanks, Gary. And just to reiterate, so the select board is, I believe, intending to put the override on the warrant this year. So, but we do have a lot of work to do in order to substantiate that and come up with a budget. So there's a lot more work to be done, but we are attempting again. So
yeah, I mean, another point too, Karen. We see like you have the paper $3 million. Where did that come from? Like, I haven't seen one thing that substantiates a $3 million override. We've seen no detail. We've seen no collaboration of any of the departments to say, okay, yeah, we need $3 million. How do we know it's not 5? How do we know it's not 1? We don't know.
Yeah, no, and we did, right. And
and this is nothing. This is not our issue. This is
right.
This is an issue.
Yeah. I think there's a balance, right, between what number might be palatable,
right,
and that there's a maximum there. What is the maximum? I don't know what it is, but is a 3 million, you know, when you calculate what a $3 million override is and you say, okay, the average homeowner will pay X dollars, do we think that's palatable? Do, you know, if it was 4 million and the number would be X, does that go out of the range? And so, you know, does the 3 million suffice? You know, you don't, you know, do you want to make the number so big then it totally just gets blown away? Or do you make a number that doesn't get all the needs met, but at least it, you know, right? There's a lot of discussion that goes
Yeah,
on what the number
exactly.
is. Right?
And I haven't seen a tally of the departments that says we need this amount of money. Nobody's done that analysis.
No. Right. Yep.
Hem.
So we have a lot of hands up. So I think Hugh was next. And
Buzzy
then
had it
I
next.
think I was next.
you were next. Buzzy, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, thank you. This is the Finance Committee. Let's talk about the Finance Committee. All right. Gary just said finance comes first, right? Whether it does or it doesn't, we're obviously, all of us, very concerned about this. It's our job to put forward a budget at town meeting, not the select board, not the school committee, our job. All right. In my opinion, the buck stops here. We have this report now. The question is how we're going to respond to it. All right. I think the central job of the Finance Committee is education. I like the fact that Gary and others have said they've reached out to the select board. I think we need to reach out to the school committee as well. And rather than, you know, trying to find fault with each other, I think we should take the lead in organizing everybody to make a unified effort to discuss all of this, come up with a number, come up with a strategy, and educate the public. Sure, it may be the select board that's the most appropriate body to operate some sort of ombudsman to take complaints from people or questions about how the town is operating its particular departments. And the same thing with the school committee. But at this time, if credibility is an issue standing in the way of financial stability for this town, we need to take it upon ourselves to make sure these things are done in order to protect that financial stability. It's the Finance Committee that has the responsibility to come up with a budget that makes sense for the town. All right. So I think we should leave this meeting, or perhaps a series of meetings, with a strategy for educating the public, for organizing the other branches that are involved in this, the schools and the town, in that educational effort, which includes keeping open communication with everybody to deal with issues of lack of credibility.
Thank you, Buzzy. So can I just, I think we need to talk about that a little more. So the Finance Committee recommends the budget at town meeting, but I think the select board and the town administrator have a very integral part of determining their suggestion for the override. So I think we kind of opine on it in some regards, but they're the operational group. So I think they need to be a critical part of the override budget, in my opinion. But
okay, I want to disagree with that. I want to make it very clear that I think it is primarily our responsibility. But I did say we're all to cooperate, and not just the select board, but also the schools. I haven't heard anything about that.
Right.
Yep. Thank you. Go ahead, Betty, you've got your hand up. Oops, you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Okay, so I disagree with a lot of things that was said tonight, but I won't say that, and I'm speaking from my personal opinion, as the State Ethics Board told me to do. Stand in from a mirror and say that to myself. I agree with Buzzy very wholeheartedly. We need the override. We need to work to have an override. We need to educate people to understand why we have an override. And so as an individual, I'm willing to help facilitate this and actually have already started work to facilitate this so that the community can have a place to come to make even reservations, to attend different forums, to say if they have specific questions, to write them. There are many, many people who will not come before a board. There's a lot of shyness to that. I understand that. And especially if they have to wait a long time, which they do very often. So I agree with Buzzy that we should work together now. And bring in the select board, who I know also wants this, who knows we need the override. Let's educate, let's work together. And I volunteer with several other volunteers to help get this message out there.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify, I don't disagree with Buzzy at all. I agree the Finance Committee is an integral part. And I don't want to be in a standoff to say, well, we're going to wait for them, so therefore we'll do nothing. So I fully support, and we've been in full support of moving ahead. So I just want to clarify my comment. But they do need to be integral into it. So, but go ahead. Thank you, Betty, so much. Zach, you've got your hand up.
Hey everyone, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Solve my computer problems. So as most of you know, I'm a new member to the FinCom meeting commission, and I think this actually gives me an interesting perspective. And just kind of hearing what everybody says, I'm gonna try to keep this quick, but kind of speak for people that aren't as familiar with everything and that need to be educated. What is an override? What does it do? Why do we need an override?
Right.
How will we prove we need it? Who is this need affecting? Who is this need not affecting? What are we doing for education of this? And then I think we need to break it down simply, prioritize and execute, right? What are the means and methods to do this? What are going to be the cost? Who, how, and when are they going to do it? So I just wanted to add to the whole education piece. I think it really starts there, but it doesn't start with just a discussion or an idea, like a pamphlet, a flyer. What's the first step? How can we affect 5? That may affect 10, that may affect 20. And there's a lot of these questions that I need to answer for myself to truly understand what we're deciding on or not deciding on, That's it.
Thank you, Zach. Well said. Absolutely. It's, having all sorts of perspectives, and someone new to the Finance Committee is a great perspective, because you said it all right there. We're going to start with the basics in education. Go ahead, Al.
I just wanted to quickly say that the American Legion post in Northwestport has graciously offered to have a forum for this kind of discussion, an open forum where we can have different different views, get different perspectives on this whole thing. So I'm just tossing that out as a possibility for some of the things that people have been talking about getting different feedback from different groups. So I just wanted to throw that up. That's all.
Thank you, Al. Cindy, are you next? I'm losing track of my
I think so.
Yes, thank you.
Just quickly, I mean, I think, that goes back to my original comment about having a public forum. I think that it would be very unfortunate if we went so far down the road with this and did not include that public input. And, you know, if the American Legion is available, or whatever venue that may be suitable, to have a group of people, you know, from all parts of town to attend, to understand. And as you know, Zach has mentioned, I've said right from the beginning that we need to educate, not placate, you know, the people that are the naysayers. You know, we can't just push them aside and say, no, they're wrong, or maybe they don't have their facts straight. We do need to educate them. Buzzy, by the way, I sent you some material last night. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at it, but there's some great, very simple primers out there that really explain, excuse me, the limitations of 2.5, how it works and how it impacts your town. So I think that there's material out there that we can, you know, easily garner. But I will remind everyone, because Karen and I went through this for 2 years in a row. We're now roughly 8 to 9 weeks before town meeting. So, you know, in the perfect world, we would be having this discussion in October or November. But we're having it, we'll call it March. Next week is March. We're having it in March. It does not give us a lot of time to debate whether this method is better than this, or to go through a lot, because we have got to start now. We have got to start very quickly to put together that material. I'm going to be out of town for the next several days, so I unfortunately, it's easy for me to say this, and I really can't help you contribute, but time is of the essence. I mean, it can't be said more bluntly than that. It has to be now. It can't be, you know, we'll have a meeting and then next week we can talk. We got to get out and start talking to people now.
Did I
Thank
say
you, Cindy. Go ahead. You can respond to that. Absolutely.
So we have begun. On March 8th, there is the candidates night that's going to be held at the school. And I was told this by Tony Vieira. He said it was being sponsored by Business to Business and Bay Coast Bank. And he said that at that time, it is also possible to talk about the override. We could actually, the next night, just dedicate it to the override. We can look at that. So that's something that the high school is setting up. We are setting up a website. You do have the town website where we're trying to put information. I don't think that it's adequate. I would prefer that it be the kind of web page like the departments have, and people could go to it and see a lot of information. Buzzy and I today talked about the definitions to explain to people what an override is. We've got a whole list of it. And then with it, try to explain how that definition works into the question of the override. We're looking at letters to editors. So there are people out there doing that. And if each one of us does something like that, it doesn't have to be a committee. If each one of us, and if we have friends who want to do research and this kind of thing, then they should. And if they want to get in touch with me, I'll be glad to deal with that. I can't do it all, but I can get it started. So we are moving, Cindy. We need your help.
Good. Well, there's some things I can provide and some things that I have
know.
limitations, but you know, I've been with you all the way. I get frustrated when things get bogged down. I'm an action person, not a planner. I like results. I'm not great in the planning phase. So
Okay.
anyway.
Thank you. Al, you have your hand up next. So go
But I
ahead.
did too.
A couple of very, very quick
Oh,
points.
you did too? I'm sorry. Hugh did.
Hugh,
Hugh's hand was-
Go
First,
ahead. I just sort of miscellaneous comments, maybe be brief. Zach touched on a very good point, I thought, though, and that is we talked about what it would cost, this, that, and the other thing. That's true, that's important, but what the results would be, what it's going to be used for.
Right.
We will add 2 people to the highway department, or we will do this, or we will do that. What are you going to get for your buck, your additional buck in the override? We don't know what that is. That needs to be determined, but I think that's important to, from Al's point of the customer, what's the customer going to get for his additional taxes? As far as the department heads are concerned, I'm not so sure that Gary had it actually right. I don't think it's a matter of anticipating retribution as such. I think, at least in my experience, it is more wanting to be a good soldier. The town has allocated this amount for my department. I told them what I think I need. I haven't got when I've got what I got, and it's my job to make it work with what I've got, not to be ungrateful and so forth, which may be in the minds of people. You know, this is what I've been served, and I got to make it do. As far as our collective role, individuals are fine, but Buzzy is the one to consult on this one. But back, there were restrictions, I know how far they go, as to how a finance committee is involved in electioneering, etc. Individuals are fine. But the committee as a whole, there are questions. And really, the only other thing I wanted to add, which is very minor, in addition to the room they're talking about, et cetera, the library has a room for meetings, which is used quite regularly as well. That's it.
The only thing I would suggest is that if we're gonna do meetings that are gonna be grassroots effort meetings, I think that maybe this is what we're talking about here, that we don't use town facilities to do it. And here's the reason why. I think that has more momentum if, like Al mentioned, using a facility where you'll get a local group or a local community, the local neighborhoods to come in and speak on what they believe in. I think the impression is if we're going to use a library, whatever, and this is only a personal opinion, if we're using like a library or, you know, it's great that we have those facilities to use, but I think if it's going to be grassroots, it has to be kind of like, you know, we're doing this on our own. We're initiating this on our own.
The American Legion Hall is the town building.
You're right. I was going to say that.
Okay.
Funny enough, and nobody knows that. Yeah, and I didn't know until a few days ago. Just want to tee off for a second on Cindy's point. We need to educate the other people, but they need to educate us. The customer needs to educate what they want. And I know I'm a retailer. I'm a recovering grocer, so I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't get out of that. It's so important to listen to your customer, and they don't always know the right answer. It's so damned easy to decide how to run somebody else's business. I get it completely, but it is so important for us to tuck in and listen to the concerns so they buy in. And I'll leave it at that. I just want to leave it at that. It's a buy-in. And guess what? We, meaning town officials, our group, whatever it might be, might just learn something. I mean, who the hell are we? We're just the same people that everybody else is. We're just doing the best that we can, and let's learn from them as well as they hopefully learn from us, so that we can come to a conclusion that does what is best for Westport. That's my big deal. Other than my family and my dog, the biggest thing is not necessarily in that order either. Westport is everything to me, and I just want what is best for us for the future. So You know, I'm going to sign off tonight because you've got other stuff to talk about. And I'm getting a little teary because it is so important for me to just make sure that everybody, north, south, whatever socioeconomic group, is not only represented, but is acknowledged, and their concerns are listened to and dealt with. But we need to have a group that, not necessarily our group, a group that gets this information and blends it together into a business model that makes sense for all of us. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, and he, she, they, I don't know, I can't. I just want to say thank you for your time, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Al and Betty and everyone on the committee. I feel like we're in a little bit of a different place than we were a year ago, where we actually have a team of citizens behind us that can help spread the word.
Yep.
So that is huge. You know, we sat here last year, and as you know, I produced that 24-page memo and got it out there. But, you know, that's as far as we could go. And that, you know, that at least it's carried some legs, because it you know, it woke us all up a little bit. But I appreciate having a team of all of you behind us. So thank you. We'll let you do your job, do some work. Thank you.
Hear from us.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Good night. Susan, you have your hand up.
Yes. One thing I want to say is that, and I don't want to be the naysayer on this, but if the override does not pass, as we were saying, we only have 8-9 weeks till town meeting. We need to look at the reality that we may not have enough time between now and then to get things really going to the point where we need to be. That if it doesn't pass, it's like we need to start now or right after town meeting for fiscal 25. It's just, it seems like we're always waiting till the spring and then going, uh-oh, we don't have enough time.
So Karen and I had the first discussion about this when town meeting ended 2 years ago. The day when we're walking to the parking lot, it is so hard to get people incentivized until it is smack dab in front of them.
Yes.
And even with this committee, the Wednesday committee, the fiscal committee, it's easy to keep, to have, we'll meet again next week. Well, we'll try to get this information. I mean, and I'm not, blaming anyone for this. I'm just saying this is what happens, and it just snowballs until you hit that wall and you go, oh my gosh, time is, we got to get, now we have to do it, finish it now. So it's just the nature of the beast. Every year, Karen and I have talked about this right after town meeting and how we have to get going. Shauna had mentioned at the town meeting last year that this summit of, this open forum summit was going to take place in July.
Yeah.
Then, well, it's summer. Okay, well, we'll have it in September. And in all fairness, Shauna had an unfortunate accident, and I get that. But, and then September leads to holidays, which brings us to January, which brings us to the end of February, which we are. So, there's that one sweet spot that you need to attack. If you can't get something put together by October, you're screwed until January. So,
And there are 5 members on the select board. So the entire select board has a responsibility.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Oh, that's true. That's true. But it did stall out. There's no question it stalled out because it never seemed that important or that imminent.
Right.
Well, it's imminent now.
Right. Now, the other point I wanted to bring up was regarding the department head frame of mind. We do try to make do. We get our budgets and we make do. I was ecstatic to get new office equipment a couple of years ago. It came from the police station. That's how we make do. I needed new desk and it works. We're getting some other equipment, office equipment from the old high school. That's great, you know, and I don't see anything wrong with that we do need to be that kind of thrifty. But none of the departments, there's one department out there that I hear when at CIPC meetings that always comes in and says, this is where we're at. This is what we need this year. Next year, we're going to need this. And looking into the next 3, 4, 5 years, this is what we're anticipating. And that is the fire department. Everybody else looks at 1 year alone. There's no forecasting forward as to what you need forward. The other thing is there are some other things. For me personally, now that my department is combined, it's very difficult having the setup that I do across the hall from one another. Ideally, I should have like a center office for myself, and on one side have the collections and the other side the treasurer. And I looked at the town hall and it's not even feasible to do. So it's something that I just looked at and said, I can't even say to them, okay, well, if I can have these 2 or 3 offices and we move offices around, it'll work. It's just not going to work. And so I'm going to make do. And you have that mindset. If you can make it happen, you try your best to make it happen. If you can't, you just make do. And that is the department head mentality, because that's what we've always had to do.
Thank you for that perspective, Susan. Appreciate that. Buzzy, you have your hand up.
Yeah. So we're the finance committee. What are we going to do now? I think we'd all agree, tell me if you don't, that the easier job is getting something passed at town meeting. All right. So I think we need to gear up for that. But I think even with the short time frame that we have, there's a good chance that this year we could get something passed at town meeting. And then it's a matter of the more difficult job, getting something passed at the polls. And as Hugh suggested, in some ways, that's a more difficult matter for the finance committee, because although it's okay for us to not only educate with respect to town meeting, but to suggest and advocate for the budget that we put forward, there are limits on the finance committee advocating once the matter goes to the polls. So I'd like to raise the question right now. What should we dedicate ourselves to doing, at least between now and town meeting, to not only come up with a budget, working with the school committee and with the select board, come up with a budget or a choice of budgets, one budget without an override, one or more with different overrides at town meeting. What can we commit ourselves to do starting tonight?
Well, we already have the budget with no override, more or less. I mean, with, you know, we've got kind of a moving target of, you know, the school gap, but we've done the non-override budget. I believe that the town administrator is preparing a budget with some type of override. So the select board has not determined what that dollar amount is. I mean, our group came up with 3 million. it was, I don't want to say an arbitrary number, but I mean, there was roughly 10% of the current levy. If you go much higher than that, it starts to push some of the numbers. Much lower than that, you're really not going to gain much of anything. And so the question is, and this is what the select board is trying to determine, do you levy in the whole 3 million in 1 year? Do you feather it in 1 million in a year, 1.5 million for 2 years? Do you put the excess and the stabilization? So these are the issues that they have talked about. Whether or not that's a question that we should deal with as well, I think that's valid. So I think that we have started that approach, but no one has determined what that real number is. Is it going to be $3 million? I don't know.
Well, first of all, I don't understand why we're just talking about the select board. Why are we not also talking about the school?
Because they present a budget to us. I mean, they have asked their town administrator to prepare a budget with override assumptions in it.
But again, ever since I've been on the finance committee, I think there's been acceptance, maybe until now, that the buck stops with the finance committee. It's sure, we want to cooperate with the select board, we want to cooperate with the school committee, but it is the finance committee that presents a budget to town meeting. And I'll call the ethics committee tomorrow to see if I'm right about this, but there's nothing wrong with our advocating for one or more of these budgets and making the case for it. So it's our job, it seems to me. And I'm handicapped in some ways in contributing, but I'm retired. Okay, I realize there are other people like Karen who are busy with the very important basic job of making a living. They've got jobs, but I'm retired. There's some of the rest of us who are retired. Maybe we retirees get together and work on this. But I think it's become clear that the buck is going to have to stop with us. And in my opinion, legally and legitimately, it does.
Yeah, Buzzy raises a good point. And I guess the only question is, and I'm sure we'll find the answer to this, how far can we advocate for an override? Us, the finance committee. How far can we go in advocating? Because if we're promoting, I don't want to say promoting, but if we're presenting a certain budget at the town meeting, then in fact, is that considered us promoting that budget? Or are we just doing it as we need to satisfy the finances for the town? I mean, that's something that I think we need to find out what's involved with all that. I wouldn't know the answer.
I can find out. I will call tomorrow.
Yeah, but Buzzy raises a good point, though. I think that's valid.
Hugh, go ahead. Oh,
you're
you're
on
on
mute.
mute, Hugh.
I look forward to Buzzy's report. My recollection is we inquired a year or so ago and got a message that we can't do much of anything, but maybe that was a mistake and maybe people have changed their mind. In any event, we want to have current information, so we look forward to Buzzy's report.
Great. And my recollection was, the finance committee makes a recommendation on all warrant articles that have a financial impact, which of course the override would be one. And we don't need to necessarily state an opinion, but it's factually based to say, as an example, so the original budget has, as an example, 3 highway positions eliminated from the position, from the department. And if we can explain what services are lacking based on not having those 3 positions, then our presentation would be, if we bring those back, this service would be restored. Or if 2 can, I think we can frame it in a factual basis and not an opinion basis.
I think that's a good point.
So you're on mute, you.
So yeah, that wasn't what I meant, and that, sure, that's fine, that's the presentation of the town meeting. But what I think is the issue is, electioneering, rousing people, supporting and so forth and so on, as a political campaign, as it were, and whatever degree is possible. I thought it was not, we're very limited, but again, Buzzy's gonna tell us. I don't have any problem with that kind of presentation at town meeting. It's the getting the voters out, if you will, kind of issue that's questionable, or hopefully not, but I thought was questionable.
I agree.
Anyone else have anything? Go ahead, Zach.
I just want to agree that we need to present it with facts and kind of like how I mentioned earlier, means and methods. So the means are presenting this in facts so people can, it's palatable. And then what is the method? What is something simple and direct that can really easily relay these facts to people, because they speak much louder than opinions.
Great, thank you, Zach.
And I just want to say, I agree with Zach, but the point also is to get the information out before, so the people who wish to follow your point of view will be there at the town meeting. If you simply talk to the audience, you may have an audience that is not interested. You need to do work beforehand, as we all have said.
I personally don't do social media, but it's like, yeah, I'm already thinking about that as an avenue. If someone did, you know, as an avenue to get that different audience in, right?
So back to Buzzy's point, where, you know, what's our next step in terms of that? So I had reached out to Jim Hartnett to really wanting to catch up with him about what, you know, what he's working on in terms of the override budget, and even is he planning a presentation, or is each department going to do a presentation for the override to speak their own words? And so, you know, we need to really be focused on that as well. And so I need to catch up with Jim. So I know the select board is approving their version, their recommendation of the fiscal 24 budget this evening. So that'll come over to us after this point. So I would imagine Jim's next thing would be to really focus on the override budget as well too.
Could I suggest that we set a calendar for things that we think need to be done, and ideal times by which they should be done?
Sure.
All right, let's discuss that. Karen, so you want to get some sort of feedback. I mean, I think, number one, there needs to be some sort of structure for constant discussion and cooperation between the schools, the town, and the finance committee. Now, I know some of that's been going on, no? Or is it just something that we've been promoting but not happening?
Well, there
I'm
was,
sorry.
there was a
Say
meeting.
that again? Well, I'm sorry, I missed your question, Buzzy.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening with, I mean, we were lucky in our group to have Jim and to have Tom. It seemed to me that one of the most exciting things that came out of our weekly discussions was a very cooperative attitude among everyone. So it seems to me that the finance committee's got an opportunity here to pick up the ball from the group that met weekly, which is not to say that that group needs to disband. But there's some momentum here. Some things have been done. Al's available to discuss those things. I'm available. Cindy's available. I mean, it seems to me we have an opportunity here to continue that work and add to it our own perspectives and discussion, but it's an opportunity I don't want to see lost. Am I alone in this?
No,
No.
everyone's just silent.
Well, I'm, if I am alone in it, let's forget it.
No, I mean, I agree. We need to continue, and that's, we have to weigh in and recommend the article. So we have a lot of work to do. So it's not being, I don't feel that it should be stopping. We need to continue.
So then the question is, how do we proceed?
Right, that is the question. So we have a lot of things coming up at us at the same time, right? So the first pressing element is the fiscal 24 budget, and things can be done in parallel, but there's going to be nothing in the fiscal 24 budget that is going to change our opinion. In fact, as we discussed last year, the issues only continue to magnify in the fiscal 24 budget. So but we do need to kind of work on that. We can't, it's probably a little too early for us to finalize a budget because we're still waiting for state aid and a couple other things, but we can have a pretty detailed conversation about that maybe next week. Once we get the select board's budget and we get that over to us. So the biggest issue is going to be any allocation of free cash to supplement the budget or not. And then we can move ahead. Cindy, go ahead.
So I also have a request going back to the select board again, because they have kind of the view. It had been mentioned in a couple of postings, I believe, or articles, about this forward 5-year plan. So the Fiscal Stability Committee had a 5-year financial forecast prepared. Bay Coast Bank paid for the analysis to be done of a 5-year financial forecast of just operations. But I would like to hear from, I guess, the select board after their review of the various issues across the town, what the 5-year needs are of the town. We talk about different things in little silos, but we haven't put this all together. So, there's the water and sewer issue. It's my understanding that the town's share of that is not going to be very substantial, but I've never seen that, in print. I've never really seen what the plan is for financing any of that that's going down the road. You keep hearing about dredging over at Hicks Bridge. Is that going to be covered by a state grant or not? Is that another couple of $1 million that's going to have to be done? The disposition of the school. Do we dispose of it, not dispose of it? If we keep it, it costs X. Even if we sell it, it's going to involve some additional funds depending on how much we're able to sell it for. There's no way we're going to sell it for $10 million. But anyway, there are costs associated with that. Where is that money going to come from? There's a whole host of items out there. The highway department is saying that they need a new shed. Theirs is falling down. I don't know how much money is involved in that. So there are these projects across town, repair of the various town buildings. Yeah, the annex building, the town hall. You know, they had no electrical fire there. I mean, these things, we can't keep putting Band-Aids on these buildings that people work in every day and are open to the public. So I would like to see what's down the road, because people get hit with this all the time. And that really irritates people. And I get it, because all of a sudden it's an emergency and we have to do this. We have to do this now. We had to build a school. Oh, but we didn't include the administration building. I've heard all the reasons behind that. To me, they're not very valid. But anyway, it is what it is. We have an administration building that needs to find a home. Is that going to cost something? There's a campground sitting there that there are people that want to, you know, develop it for a recreational space, whether it be for schools or not for schools. Okay, the last price tag I saw on that was $6 or $7 million. Okay, where does that fit in? So I would like to see a comprehensive plan. Boy, this town just needs a damn plan. Instead of just living from one year to the next year, or really month to month. And I get it, a lot of people have to live that way, but that isn't a sign of leadership. I mean, that isn't a sign of that we know what the hell we're doing. And the finance committee is kept in the dark about a lot of these things until the very end. You know, this whole septic issue, okay? Is it going to cost the town money? Is it going to cost the residents money? You know, I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. But people need to have answers, because they keep hearing rumors about this project or that project, and they're afraid about how much of these things are going to cost in the long run. So I would like to see a comprehensive list of capital items that are going to cost not a couple $100,000, but the big ticket items. Put them down on paper, put them in print. And I want to see how much all of that adds up to. Because I think it's only fair, if we're asking about an override, that these are things that are yet to come. These things could come and hit you, because that's what happens all the time, right? Oh yeah, they didn't tell us about that. Yeah, they kept that in the back pocket. That's where the damn credibility comes from. So let's be upfront. This is our 5-year plan or a 10-year plan of what kinds of issues the town is facing going forward.
Thank you, Cindy. Hugh? Oh, you're on mute, Hugh.
Cindy has a good point, but a lot of the things are, it's speculation and conjecture. It's kind of hard to plan around those. The whole thing about septic is a trial balloon from the Department of Environmental, which is ridiculous, and everybody knows it. So what's going to happen there is anybody's guess down the way.
But people out there are worried about it.
They can be worried, but there's no answer, because nobody knows what's going to happen. There's not even any prediction. And as far as town this and that, yeah. But I don't think, I'm totally opposed to having 4 obsolete abandoned buildings by consolidating stuff into the old high school with a tag, people talking of 25 to 35 million coming out of the who knows where. Never going to happen. But what I'm afraid of is incrementally there is some use of the building and everything. Really, your point, Cindy, decide whether or not you're doing it. I don't see it as an investment asset. I see it as a white elephant. And the longer it's kept, the more money it consumes that could be used elsewhere. But the idea of trying to add up, we've had that, like a capital budget with fire engine and other things over a period of time. Those are predictions that are reasonably predictable. What's going to happen with the state, nobody knows. You can make any guess you want.
But I think that this is on the minds of people when they're being asked for a tax increase. They just want to know if the septic issue is just a threat, then tell people it's a threat. If the school, yeah.
We can't tell them that, we can't promise that. It's the state at work, and we can't control the state. We can guess, we can say it's yes, it's no, yes, it's going to happen, no, it's not going to happen, who knows? I don't think that really advances the discussion much.
Well, I think a 5-year plan is essential. Certainly within any 5-year plan, there's a level of estimates that can become guesses. And it's a rolling plan, and you change your estimates, and you say, here's my estimates, and these are the assumptions that I made in them. I think that's critical to do. We're a $50 million business. Any $50 million business anywhere else has a 5-year plan, and they make guesses. They don't know what their revenues are going to be or their sales are, or think they don't, we're no different. So, I think we need to do that and make some reasonable assumptions. And then you start to see some trends, and you start to see where we're going. Right. And I think that's an important element to the 5-year plan. And
Karen, I would agree with all that. The point of putting it down on paper as not as a plan, but as a thought, a feasibility study, maybe is a better way to put it, because what happens then is the unpleasant realities may now be focused on through the estimating you're talking about, et cetera, and it turns out not to make any sense. So you do something different. Yes, what I was reacting to was really, here's a plan in black and white that's going to be implemented over time. The planning process is certainly legitimate.
Yeah, and to Sue's point earlier, a 5-year capital plan is important. And, I thank the fire chief for at least doing, what should be done, because we should have a 5-year plan for all departments. That should be in place. So if some roof 4 years from now is probably looking to be done, we should be knowing about that now, that in 5 years, things are going to be coming up like that. We shouldn't wait till, and I think the CIPC in some sense they look at the current needs for this year and they say, we can't even fund those. So why have a 5-year plan? Because we can't even do what's desperate and urgent in front of us. But that's not the answer. The answer is to do all the more reasons why you create a 5-year plan, so we can demonstrate that we have needs. The needs keep growing and the deferred needs keep growing. And that's what's important to demonstrate. But when we don't have any numbers, we just talk and we have nothing to substantiate. So I think these things are important.
I would agree that we can do that and should do that for physical assets, structural machinery, et cetera, and so forth. That, because they're there, they need to be dealt with, they need to be replaced or not, or whatever. I think a plan as far as the operations of different departments concerned is a waste of time and effort, because nobody knows what the resources will be. So you can have all kinds of plans based upon wishful thinking. And I think most of the department heads would say it is a total waste of time to plan when you have no capacity of actually implementing it. Structural, et cetera, replacement of things, sure, that's real, it's in place, and you need to either replace it or get new or not do without it, and that's legitimate.
But I wasn't referring to wish list items. I was referring to, reality things, this dredging issue. There are significant repair issues that need to be dealt with. I'm not talking about, in a perfect world, it would be great to have X, Y, or Z. I'd just like to know what the state of conditions are, as someone had mentioned about the buildings, about all of the buildings in town.
We agree about that. I wasn't disagreeing. It was a matter of the planning for the future for a department where it's different funding for this and that. There's no department assurance you actually have the funding. It's a waste of time if you don't get it. But physical or jobs that are booming, sure, that's right.
Go to Sue.
Thank you. Sue, go ahead.
I just want to say that I think as treasurer, this is one of the things I've always looked for. We have 11 buildings, large buildings, and some smaller ones in town in varying ages, varying state of repair. And I don't have a good list of what needs to be done on them. We are able with stabilization now to reserve in stabilization for a particular project. So if we know a roof needs to be done and that roof is going to cost $1 million, and 5 years from now it needs to be done, we can set aside the money each year, some money each year for that project. If we don't have fully the funding to do that, it's kind of like we're making our payments in advance on these things. But if we were able to set aside even $100,000 a year dedicated to a specific project, then even if it doesn't meet the needs at the time that we're ready to do it, we only have to borrow the remainder of it. If it's $1 million project and we only have 500,000 set aside, at least now we're only borrowing 500,000, and it's saving the town a tremendous amount of money. The stabilization does have that capability now to reserve for specific projects.
Sue, can you clarify that? So if let's say there was a reserve that was set up within the stabilization for a certain project, and then what happens if you're saving for it for 5 years, and then for whatever reason, you don't need to do the project anymore? How does the money get unrestricted or freed up?
It would have to go back to town meeting to be revoted to another project.
And to another project, not to available funds to be used, or?
I believe it would have to be voted to another capital project. And we know we've got plenty of those out there, so it shouldn't be an issue. And I would be interested in having a more comprehensive list of even some of the smaller needs that we see come before CIPC. I mean, when you have needs that are 500,000, right now they're looking to rebuild the playgrounds. They've been before us for the last 3 years, looking to rebuild the playgrounds, and those are quite sizable in amount. And those type of things, if we have enough of those things, I mean, we can dedicate a little either through stabilization, or we need to find a way of looking at those things more realistically, whether it's the playgrounds, whether it's a truck for the fire department that's a $500,000 truck, or whatever that item might be. You know, you have $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 items, they start to add up pretty quick.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
I'm not muted this time. As far as the playgrounds go, I can add a little to that. CPC has allocated $350,000 toward that project, subject, of course, to town meeting approving that recommendation. And I understand they're also maybe having pretty good success and looking for private donations to fund a good deal of it. But that's only one of the projects, of course.
That sounds great. I think what the recreation department needs to do is find a way of coming up with a fundraiser that can maintain them year after year, because we don't want to do this every 20 years. They did it 20, 30 years ago, built the playgrounds. Unfortunately, like so many other things in this town, it wasn't maintained. Now it just needs to be totally replaced.
Fuzzy has his hand up.
Karen's muted.
Sorry, I was talking, but I was on mute. I was saying Buzzy, go ahead.
So first of all, you know, we've talked theoretically about whether it's a worthwhile thing to do to have a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, just for certain sorts of budgets or for everything. It's done by a number of other towns. And it's the Finance Committee that does it. I can send you copies of reports to town meeting that are prepared by some finance committees, where every year there is a 5-year schedule for the future, a 5-year report from the past. Now it's tough to do, and I don't think it's something you can do in just 1 year. But we can also find out from the towns that do it whether they find it useful. Maybe they think it's a waste of time, but they may convince us that it's possible and value. So I suggest we do that. There are other things we talked about. I would hate to see this meeting end without our making some decisions about action on them. As far as education is concerned, there was talk about having a forum. Al apparently has already taken steps to have one, but there's no reason why we can't be talking to the school committee and the select board about arranging the kind of thing that Gary says he's talked about with them in the past. Cindy has talked to them about in the past. Obviously, it's not going to happen unless we make it happen. I talked earlier about some sort of ombudsman or at least some website that people are invited to write to with things they've heard about the town that undermine credibility, and they'd like to know what the truth is. And we'd like to know about these things as well. We're the finance committee. If money's being wasted, maybe it's been the select board or the schools that have been wasting it, but we ought to be very concerned about the fact that money's being wasted, and keep that in mind next time a budget comes from those sources. We've also talked about the fact that we want to go into town meeting with alternative budgets. I don't think we should be just waiting for them. We ought to be trying to make sure that those alternative budgets are prepared on time and that we're ready to support them, since presumably we're the ones who are going to be offering them. So I'd like to see us come out of this meeting at the end with some commitment to some of these things and at least a loose schedule for achieving them. And people who will take on the responsibility for doing it. I don't think all of this should be done by the chair and the vice chair. There are only 7 of us now, but there's 7 of us.
Go ahead, Gary.
You know, I keep going back to the timeline. We're in February. Well, let's say we're in March. I mean, a couple more weeks, we're in March.
1 week.
What is the reality of getting this done this fiscal year? I mean, we really have to think about this. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't make the attempt to, but to do this the correct way and to get the buy-in and to feed off of all the good work that the committee had done, the taxpayers committee. I think we want to be able to take our time, not like, you know, time's of the essence. This is kind of crazy, but take our time with us and do it the correct way instead of maybe rushing into something before town meeting and it fizzles out and we don't have the support from the school committee, the finance committee, I mean, the select board. So I think we may want to send a feeler out to the school committee and the select board to say, listen, how engaged do you want to be in this process with us going forward into town meeting? Do you have the time? Do you have the resources? I think we need to find that out before we try to make an attempt. And I get that it's us that should be spearheading this, but we're going to need the buy-in from those groups also. I think that that's important at this stage of the game because we're already in March. I mean, I know Jim gave us a schedule on what it would take. I mean, we would have to go to town meeting, I guess, with 2 budgets, and we would have to then hope that one gets approved at town meeting. Then we'd have to go for the vote. So this dates and punchline, that we have to get set in stone before we can say, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this. Do we have the time to do it? That's, I guess, my point. I don't know.
We sat here, right, last April when we, as the finance committee, elected to, pass on the override because we just needed exactly what you just said, Gary. We need more time to come up with what's right. And that was, 10 months ago. And I just have a reluctance if we try to push the pause button again, that we're going to be the same place 1 year from now going, do we, we need to, and the train's moving. We have a residents that are engaged and supportive. I would feel a reluctance to put a pause on that, because then we lose all momentum. So I think we need to move in the best way we can. I believe the select board is recognizes the need for a override. I acknowledge that the school committee recognizes the need for an override. I mean, when we look at their budget and what the town number is for the budget, there's a big gap there that's significant. It's over $1 million difference right now that the town administrator budget has with what the school committee's request is. And so that's going to that needs to be resolved. But we need to come up with solutions so that we just don't keep having this every year. So I think we just need to keep moving.
Yeah, I mean, the only concern is that we do it right. If we can do it, I want us to be able to have it be effective. I agree.
Yeah.
It's like deja vu all over again.
Right.
And it's been like that for quite some time. Not just 1 year. It's been multiple years that we've been talking about this, and we just can't let the department struggle.
Right.
So, yeah, we need to. We need to move forward with it. I just hope that we have the buy-in from other groups to help us.
And I agree 100%, right? We want to have the buy-in, and we need the buy-in, and we want to produce whatever information is best and accurate and complete and as we can. So this way we're not hindering something from passing. So, but I think the time is now. Hugh, go ahead.
I don't know who it was now back in the day in the course of the meeting, but someone said, I believe, that Jim is working on a budget with the department heads we just were talking about, what the amounts would be, etc. So unless I have misunderstood completely, that's in progress and not something that we need to start dealing with now. We want to find out what's happening, what the progress is, but I think that's already en route.
Is that what?
I believe it is. I mean,
Somebody said, I don't know who it was now, somebody did say that.
I did say I needed to reach out with Jim to see where that stands, because we had spoken a while ago and we all agree that that in order to produce an override budget, whatever amount that is, there needs to be substantiation by department for that. So, everyone was on board with that important need. So I believe Jim's working on it. I need to catch up with him and see
the select board has directed him to do that
Mhm.
at their last meeting, or even 2 meetings ago. Directed him to put together an override budget.
But then that's something to respond to, at least to criticize or
right, to review, right.
And maybe when that gets published, though, whatever that document is, we have a joint meeting with the select board. There's nothing to say that we can't meet with the select board at one of their meetings, and we just maybe talk about it like in a broad sense and get a sense of what they feel should happen. And I think that, not to put anybody on the spot, but maybe that gets the ball rolling.
But we need something to respond to.
Right.
Yeah. Point. And maybe that's the action item.
I agree, Hugh. That's certainly one action item.
Yeah, and I committed and I've reached out to Jim, so I'm hoping that we can touch base, and then I think we as a finance committee should meet next week, and I can give an update to you on what Jim's estimated process is for an override budget, what the timetable is and where things are. Similarly, then we can talk about the fiscal 24 budget and where, where we stand right now.
At next week's meeting, Karen?
I think so. I mean, we can talk about the fiscal 24 budget right now, if anybody would like to, but I think next week we will have the select board's budget, at least an understanding of what, if any, free cash that they're recommending to use in the budget, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, that's what I recommend, because there's still some maybe some moving items that are back and forth. So next week we'll get a better sense.
Karen, the question is, where do we stand on warrant articles that need money?
Well, I'd asked Jim, I think we just got free cash certified. So I saw that email come in just before I was logging on to the meeting. So I think free cash was certified at 2.1 million. The warrant articles are still in process, but Jim was estimating there could be other warrant articles that could use about 400,000 of free cash. Part of it's funding the old high school as well, and some an assessor warrant article. So he said there could be about 400,000 that would need free cash. He estimated the Capital Improvement Committee is still working on their recommendations, but he was suggesting that it's around $1 million that free cash would be needed for capital improvements. Again, we haven't seen any of that either. So it's, and then there was also the police may have an arbitration settlement, so there may be some more free cash that would be needed for that. So that's a solid, I don't know. I don't even know what the police would be, so I wouldn't even want to say. But so everything's still afloat. So what the other needs are for free cash, we're still waiting on. So we don't know.
So we really can't put the budget to bed without that.
Right. We need all of those pieces. So we wouldn't be able to, and we wouldn't be able to finalize the budget, because I think the state aid numbers, the governor is still working on, so we're still a little early with that too.
Beginning of March. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
So Karen, can I just ask Sue or Nicole a question on the revenue? Because I read the free cash report. As far as that, there's a $500,000 hit to free cash, but that's the receivables that they consider a liability. I'm just wondering, and I think I don't know if it was last town meeting or what town meeting it was, but we had given Sue some leeway on going after older receivables. Are any of those that show up as far as the $500,000? Because it started at 2.6, then they deduct all the hits. Are any of those able to be taken care of? I mean, I guess I don't know what years. I don't know what years those are. I guess that's the question.
I'm not sure what's included in the free cash number there. I did just submit a lot of old excise for 8 to 58 boat excise. I have some personal property that needs to go. And I'm getting it pretty cleaned up. Probably can actually add in, we just hit another year, can take another year off now that we're in 23 on excise. So I can probably hit have the girls prepare that too.
Now, let me ask you another question, Sue. On the motor vehicle first commitment, have you gotten that yet?
It's going out March 7th.
Okay, so we know what the number is. Do we know what we've budgeted for the revenues? And what's the difference, if there is one? Can anybody answer that? Or is Nicole, I don't know if somebody can answer that. Is it higher?
The first commitment came in higher than last year, but I don't know what was actually budgeted.
Yeah, I'd be interesting to see what's budgeted for fiscal 24 and what we're saying is the actual commitment. I'd be interested to see that. I mean, I think Jim has got that number.
I think,
or whatever that number is.
I think the budget for fiscal 23 is like 2.7 for motor vehicle.
2.7. And what was do you know what the commitment was, Sue? No.
I think that was right around the commitment, for first commitment. But that's fiscal 23, so that includes all the
Yeah,
other little
right.
commitments.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if are we looking at the revenues too, Karen? Is someone looking at can we get like can we get like a report? I know we used to get reports. Oh, you're on
You're
mute.
on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. So what the last version of the budget we had, which was I think a December version, and so that did have Jim's estimate of the revenue. So surely when they conclude their budget today, I'll update our FinCom budget and you'll see all the revenue components. So we'll have that for next week.
Okay. Like, great.
Yeah.
He had indicated too that he has taken a more conservative approach than previously, where before we were budgeting roughly 95% of the prior year's revenues. And I believe he's been able to take that down to, I think, 88% of the prior year revenues, because he was concerned with recession,
cash.
inflation, interest rates and whatnot.
I mean, 2.1 million is nothing to, it's a pretty decent amount of free cash, but when you have all these other things tugging at it, like Karen said, it goes quick,
Mhm.
you know?
And there were larger turnbacks because of,
Yeah.
The police, had budgeted for a salary and it didn't get paid in that year. I mean, there are a few one-time items in that large free cash number too, so.
And not only that, you have department heads that are being frugal. They're managing their departments
Oh, yeah.
correctly,
Yeah.
and they're not spending like, it's, I give credit to the department heads for doing that.
Okay, anything else? All right, so I think if we're gonna meet next week, I will give an update on where the process is from the select board's perspective on the override. We'll have the select board approved budget and then we can talk about anything there. We can do that next week. Mr. Auburn, I see you're still here. Did you have anything that you wanted to talk about, or I think Michelle's gone.
Yeah, no, Karen, thanks. Good evening, everyone. And I appreciate all the consideration. I know it's a very challenging time here, but I appreciate your consideration and support. So thank you very much, Karen.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, so we can quickly go down the agenda. I think that just the approval of the minutes of, what's my week? Sorry. Is it the 14th? Is that am I right?
Yep,
Yeah.
14th, yep. Today's the 21st.
Thank you. If anyone wants to make a motion to approve those minutes,
So moved.
any second.
I got
No,
abstain, I wasn't here.
I wasn't there either.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure there was a meeting on the 14th.
Was there a
14th?
meeting? My awful week?
Oh, no,
Yeah,
it's the
there
7th.
there
I'm
was
sorry,
not a
the
meeting.
7th.
Yeah.
The 7th. There wasn't a
Sorry.
meeting on the 14th.
The
Right,
7th, you're right. I have that right in front of me.
right.
All right. So let's revise our motion, I guess.
I guess I would move to approve the minutes of February 7th.
Thank you. Is there a second for that?
Second,
Thank you. Any discussion on the minutes at all? Nope, then I will do a roll call to approve. Fuzzy?
Actually, I wasn't there, although technically, I think people can vote on minutes even though they weren't there, but I'm not going to test that.
Okay. Hugh?
I was there and Buzzy told us earlier that he could vote, but he chooses not to, which is fine. I was there and I affirmed.
Thank you. We had Zach vote last week on minutes that he wasn't there. Zach, are you, what's your roll call vote?
Aye.
I thank you. Gary?
I was not there, so I'll abstain.
Okay. Cindy?
Aye.
And Karen, I know I was there. So thank you. So I have nothing else to on the agenda that's critical unless someone else wants to continue this meeting.
We have
Motion to
to have a
adjourn.
Yeah,
designated,
thank you.
we need to
I
have a
will,
designated motioner for us to.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
that's right.
basically-
We
We've lost
lost
our
our,
designated motioner.
we lost our ice cream vote.
Great. All right.
Uh,
So we have a
motion
motion
to
to
adjourn.
adjourn. Super. Buzzy,
Second.
Aye.
Hugh,
Aye.
Zach,
Aye.
Gary,
Yes.
Cindy,
Aye.
and Karen, I. Thank you so much. And we'll talk next week with hopefully a lot more information.